Hello, this is Dr. Hanaa Assil, and this is paper 1-3, that's paper 1, version 3 of November 2021 in the IGCSE Cambridge Chemistry. Let's take a look at the questions and discuss the answers. The particles in a substance are far apart, randomly arranged, and moving. The substance changes state and the particles are now close together. So he's starting with something that is far apart, randomly arranged and moving, and he's changing it to a state in which the particles are close together. The particles are still randomly arranged and able to move, and he's talking about the change of state from gas to liquid. Can you see that? A student put exactly 25 centimeter cubed of dilute hydrochloric acid into a conical flask. The student added 2.5 grams of sodium carbonate, measured the change in temperature. Which apparatus does he need? Well, let's take a look. For the 25 centimeter cubed of dilute hydrochloric acid, he should use a pipette. For the 2.5 grams of a solid, he should use a balance. And to measure change in temperature, he will need a thermometer. So that is C. We need a balance, pipette, and thermometer. A student separates sugar from pieces of broken glass by dissolving the sugar in water and filtering off the broken glass. What is the filtrate? Of course, if I have broken glass and sugar in water, that means the glass will remain in the filter paper as a residue, and my filtrate will be the sugar in water, which is the sugar solution. The nucleus of a particular atom consists of 19 particles. 9 of them are positively charged. That means he has 9 what? He has 9 protons. So if we have 19 particles, these could be protons and neutrons. He's saying 9 of them are positively charged. That means I have 9 protons. So that is the correct. But if he says the nucleus has a nucleon number of 9. What does nucleon number mean? Nucleon number means the total number of particles in the nucleus, or what we refer to as mass number. So actually, if he says the nucleus as a whole consists of 19 particles, then the nucleon number is 19. The nucleus has a nucleon number of 10. No, it's 19. The nucleus, number D says the nucleus has a proton number of 10. No, he said it has 9 positively charged particles, and you should realize that the positively charged particles are the protons. Which description of brass? Do you remember what is brass? Brass is an alloy. We said alloys are mixtures of metals, and we said brass is a mixture of copper and zinc. It's used for ornaments and buttons. Bronze is another alloy, which is a mixture of copper and tin. So in this case, brass is an alloy. A group 1 element combines with a group 7 element and forms an ionic bond. Which row has the electronic structures that are forming? Well, group 1 means I have to start with something that ends with 1, that has 1 in its outermost shell. So actually, my answer is A or C. And then, so if I have something with 1 electron in its outermost shell, what does it do with it? It has to lose it. So actually, I will be starting with 281 and then lose it and become 28. The group 7 means it should have 7 electrons in its outermost shell. It will gain an electron and become 28. So my answer is C. 4 covalent compounds are listed. Which row identifies the total number of covalent bonds in each compound? Let us take a look at the structure of each compound. Chlorine, what does chlorine look like? 2 chlorine atoms joined together. So this has 1 covalent bond. Methane is C with 4 hydrogens. That is 4 covalent bonds. Ammonia is N with 3 hydrogens. So that is 3 covalent bonds. And water, of course, has 2 covalent bonds. So my answer is D. Magnesium reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid to produce a salt and hydrogen gas. What is the equation for this reaction? Okay, I'm starting with magnesium. Okay, all of it is Mg. Plus hydrochloric acid. How do I write hydrochloric acid? You should realize it is HCl. The valency of hydrogen is 1 and the valency of chlorine is 1, so you don't have 2's written under it. So B is wrong. Then I want to produce a salt. Now, which salt am I going to produce? I'm going to produce magnesium chloride. You should realize that magnesium is in group 2, so valency 2. So you should put 2 under the chlorine. So A is wrong. So far A and B are wrong. And then it should give magnesium chloride plus hydrogen. How do we write hydrogen when it stands alone? You should realize that hydrogen is diatomic. So if I have something plus hydrogen, I have to write it H2. And then if you look at answer C, the balancing is correct. Remember that for these equations, the symbols have to be correct and the balancing have to be correct. The formula of sodium chlorate is this. What is the relative formula mass of sodium chlorate? Again, relative formula mass is the same as Mr, is the same as the addition of all the masses from the periodic table. Again, the mass is the big number. So sodium has a mass of 23, chlorine 35.5, oxygen is 16, and I have 3 of them. So the total Mr is 106.5. Effervescence is observed at the negative electrode during the electrolysis of concentrated sodium chloride. So he's doing electrolysis of concentrated sodium chloride. Remember we said if I have concentrated sodium chloride, so my ions are Na plus and Cl minus and H plus and OH minus from the water. Now he's asking about what? The negative electrode. Which one goes to the negative? The one that goes to the negative are the positive ions. So I have a choice between Na plus and H plus, and we said if I have a choice between Na plus and H plus, it is the H plus that reacts, so I get hydrogen gas. The energy level diagram for a chemical reaction is shown. Which statement about this reaction is correct? So first of all, let us decide, is this for an endothermic or an exothermic? Remember we said if the products are above the reactants or the products have more energy than the reactants, that means the reactants took in energy. Taking in of heat is endo. So this is for an endothermic reaction. So my answer is A or B. Now, what does endothermic mean? It means energy is taken in. Endothermic reactions take in heat. Which property explains why methane is used as a fuel? Well, it is an alkane, that is correct. It forms carbon dioxide when it burns. Actually, it forms carbon dioxide and water. It is a gas at room temperature, yes. But he's asking why is it used as a fuel? What's a fuel? A fuel is something that releases heat energy when it burns. So it does release heat energy when it burns, so it is used as a fuel. Solid copper carbonate reacts with dilute sulfuric acid. The rate of the reaction can be changed by varying conditions. Which changes always increase the rate of this chemical reaction? Increasing concentration. Yes, we said when we increase concentration, it will increase the rate. Increasing the size of the pieces. Remember, when I use bigger pieces, that actually decreases the rate. So when we want to increase the rate, I need to use smaller pieces or I need to use powder. Increasing the temperature, yes, that increases the rate. Increasing the volume. If I increase the volume, that means that I'm adding more water using dilute solution. So no, that is wrong. So it is 1 and 3. So my answer is B. Magnesium carbonate and hydrochloric acid react to form a gas. The volume of gas is measured at fixed time intervals in experiment 1 and excess of magnesium carbonate granules react with 100 centimeter cubed of hydrochloric acid. Now the experiment is repeated and this gives experiment 2. Which change is made? The first question you ask yourself is experiment 2 faster or slower? It is slower. So which of these will cause the reaction to be slower? Catalyst? No. Magnesium carbonate powder? No, that will increase the rate. Hydrochloric acid more concentrated? That would increase the rate. I want something that will lower the rate, so it is at a lower temperature. Which color change is observed when water is added to anhydrous cobalt chloride? Again, you have to know that anhydrous cobalt chloride is blue. When I add water to it, it turns to pink. So it is blue to pink. The equation for the extraction of iron from its ore is shown. Which statement is correct from this reaction? He's saying iron is oxidized? No. Fe2O3 changed into Fe. That means it actually lost oxygen. Iron 3 oxide is oxidized? No. Oxidized means gain of oxygen. The one before the arrow did not gain oxygen to form what is after the arrow. Carbon monoxide is oxidized? Yes. The CO changed to CO2, so that means that it gained oxygen. So that is oxidized. Solution X is tested separately with sodium carbonate and litmus. Which row show that X is acidic? Okay, if it is acidic and I add sodium carbonate, what should I see? You should know that sodium carbonate, any carbonate with acid, will give effervescence because it gives bubbles of carbon dioxide gas. Now, if it is acidic, what is the effect on litmus? It will turn the litmus into red. So my answer is B. Are we okay? Basic oxides are neutralized by acidic oxides. Which element forms an oxide that neutralizes calcium oxide? Now, calcium oxide is a base. Oxide of a metal is a base. So in order to neutralize it, I want an oxide that is acidic. So which of these will form acidic oxides? Remember that non-metal, like sulfur, would form an acidic oxide. Which method produces a pure sample of copper 2 sulfate crystals? So he's trying to prepare copper sulfate crystals. Which of these methods should he do? Well, he wants to add an excess of copper carbonate to dilute sulfuric acid. Well, that would work. Also, if I say warm an excess of copper oxide with dilute sulfuric acid, that also would work. But then what am I supposed to do next? If I add the copper carbonate or the copper oxide, the next thing I should do is filter. So I should put the filter to remove. Once I put the excess copper carbonate or excess copper oxide, whatever, I should filter to remove the excess solid. So that would remove the excess copper oxide or the excess copper carbonate. And then I should take the filtrate and do crystallization or evaporate the filtrate in order to obtain the copper sulfate crystals. So the one that is describing this method is that first statement when he says add excess copper carbonate to dilute sulfuric acid, filter, and we're filtering to remove the unreacted solid that we don't want. Then I take the filtrate, evaporate until crystals start to appear. Which statement about aqueous sodium hydroxide is correct? Well, let's take a look. When it is added to a solution containing sulfate ions, a white precipitate is formed. Is sodium hydroxide used to test for sulfate? No, that is not used to test for sulfate. The one that we use to test for sulfate is barium chloride or barium nitrate. That is what will give me a white precipitate with sulfate. So when it is added to a solution of copper 2 ions, a blue precipitate is formed, which dissolves to give a deep blue solution? No, this is the test for copper with ammonia, with aqueous ammonia. If you add aqueous ammonia to copper, it gives blue precipitate that dissolves to give dark blue solution, not with sodium hydroxide. So this is wrong. When it is added to a solution of iron 2, a green precipitate is formed which does not dissolve in excess. Yes, actually that is correct. To test for iron 2, I add sodium hydroxide. It gives a green precipitate insoluble in excess. When it is added to ammonium, the gas produced turns blue, litmus red. Well, actually, you use sodium hydroxide, you add it to ammonium, and you heat, but the gas that is produced does not turn the litmus paper from blue to red, because the gas that comes out is ammonia. It will turn the red litmus to blue. So the only one that's correct is C. A period of the periodic table is shown. The letters are not their chemical symbols. Which statement is correct? Well, let's take a look. He has group 1, group 2, group 3, and so on. So element R, he's telling me, is in group 1. Does not conduct electricity. You should know that group 1 is a metal. It will conduct electricity. Elements R and Y react together to form an ionic compound. Well, R is in group 1 and Y is in group 7. So yes, if I have sodium and chlorine, for example, they will react to form an ionic compound. Element Z exists as diatomic molecule? No. He's saying Z is in group 8. Anything in group 8 is monatomic. Element Z reacts with T. Well, Z in group 8 does not react with anything. We said they are unreactive gases. Lithium, sodium, and potassium are elements in group 1. Which statement about sodium is correct? So he's saying I have group 1. Sodium is more dense than potassium. No, remember that. As we go down, the density increases. The reactivity increases. The only thing that decreases is the melting point. So if he says, as I go down, sodium is more dense than potassium, no. Potassium is more dense than sodium because potassium is below sodium. Sodium reacts with water more vigorously than lithium. Yes, actually, because sodium is below lithium, and we said the one down is more reactive. Sodium has lower melting point than potassium. No, we said with melting point, the one up has higher melting point. Solid sodium does not conduct electricity. Of course not, because sodium is a metal, so it would conduct electricity. Can you see how we think about the answers for each question? So the important thing is not that the answer is A or B or C or D. You should understand why it is that answer. Which property of transition elements is different from properties of group 1? We said transition elements conduct electricity. Well, all of them conduct electricity. All of them are malleable. All of them form basic oxides. But something that is unique to the transition elements is that they form colored compounds. The noble gases are in group 8. Which statement explains why noble gases are unreactive? Remember that we said noble gases in group 8 are unreactive because they have a full outer shell. But if he says they all have 8 electrons in their outer shell, that's wrong. Helium is a noble gas and it doesn't have 8, it has 2. So they have full outer shell, and that is the correct answer. Which statement is correct for all metals? Okay, which of these applies to all metals? They conduct electricity when molten. Actually, that is correct. We said all metals conduct electricity. All metals are malleable and ductile. All metals are shiny. So the one that applies to all metals is that first one. The others, first of all, B, he says they gain electrons. That's wrong. Metals lose electrons. They have low density? No, they have relatively high density. They have low melting point? No. Remember, he's looking for something that applies to all metals. We know that there is a metal that has low melting point, which is mercury, but that does not apply to all metals. Chromium is a more reactive metal than iron, but less reactive than zinc. So if I put chromium in the electrochemical series, he's saying it is more reactive than iron, so it's above iron, less reactive than zinc, so it's below zinc. Which statements are correct? So chromium in that position. He says chromium does not react with acid. No, you should realize that in that position it is above hydrogen, so it should react with acid. Chromium oxide is reduced when it's heated with carbon. Is that correct? Yes. If the metal is lower than carbon in reactivity series, then it can be reduced when heated with carbon. Chromium reacts with zinc oxide to form zinc, so will chromium displace zinc? No, it is below it. It will not displace. Chromium reacts with steam? Well, yes, it would react with steam because it is above hydrogen. So my answer is 2 and 4, so that is C. Some properties of copper are listed. Which properties make it useful as a cooking pan? So which of these do I need to use it as a cooking pan? Of course, I don't need the fact that it conducts electricity, but I do need it conducts heat. It's ductile. Ductile means what? Ductile means it can be pulled into wires. Well, I don't need that for a cooking pan. It has high melting point. Yes, I need it to have a high melting point, so it is 2 and 4. Diagrams show some uses of water in the home. For which uses is it important for the water to have been treated? Treated means I filter it to remove insoluble solids and I add chlorine to kill harmful bacteria. So for which of these is that important? Remember that it's important for cooking or in any relation to food, but I don't need it to wash my car or to water the plants. So the only one that needs pure treated water is the cooking in diagram 1. Which gas is released when slaked lime is added to a field which has previously been treated with ammonium fertilizer? So I'm adding a base. Slaked lime is a base, calcium hydroxide, just like sodium hydroxide. I'm adding it to something that has ammonium. Remember, what was the test for ammonium? We add a base. It gives which gas? It gives ammonia gas. Which reactions produce carbon dioxide? Well, let's take a look. Heating a carbonate. When I heat a carbonate, yes, if I heat a carbonate, it will give carbon dioxide gas. Reacting a carbonate with acid, yes, if I react any carbonate with acid, it should give carbon dioxide gas. Burning methane, well, if I burn methane, you remember that methane is CH4. If I burn any alkane or alkene or alcohol, it gives carbon dioxide plus water. Cracking, do you know what's cracking? Cracking means breaking of long chain hydrocarbons in shorter chains. This does not give me carbon dioxide gas, so I need 1, 2, and 3. Sulfur burns to make sulfur dioxide. Which row describes a source of sulfur and a use of sulfur dioxide? Where do we get sulfur from? You have to remember, we get sulfur from underground deposits. So my answer is C or D. Now, what do we use sulfur dioxide for? We use it as a food preservative. Lime is used to treat wastewater from a factory. Which substance is removed by lime? Of course, to be reacted with lime. Lime is a base, so it has to react with something that is acidic. So we're removing an acid like sulfuric acid. The structures of 3 chemical compounds are shown. To which homologous series do these belong? Let's look at 1. 1 is something that has a double bond, so it should be an alkene. So my answer is B or D. Then 2 has OH. OH is what? Is the functional group for alcohol. What about 3? 3 has only single bond, so that's an alkane. So my answer is D. Fuel X produces carbon dioxide and water when it is burned. So does fuel Y. So he wants 2 things. When I burn them, they produce both carbon dioxide and water. So what could X and Y be? Remember, to produce carbon dioxide and water, I have to start with alkanes. So it has to be D. If I burn hydrogen, it gives only water. If I burn carbon, it gives only carbon dioxide. He wants it to give both. What is the main constituent of natural gas? You should know that natural gas is mainly methane. Which statement describes the members of a homologous series? Remember, when we say they belong to the same homologous series, this is because they have the same functional group. To be members of the same homologous series, they have to have the same functional group. Which monomer molecules are used to make polyethylene? Remember, if I say polyethylene, I made it from what? I made it from ethene. So which of these is ethene? Ethene is an alkene. Remember, the general formula of alkenes are CnH2n. So an alkene is the one in which the hydrogen is twice the carbon. And I want it to be ethene, so I want it to have two carbons. So ethene is C2H4. Ethanol is manufactured by catalytic addition of steam to compound P. So to make ethanol, I want to add steam to what? Remember, we can make ethanol by adding steam to an alkene, which is ethene. If I want to make ethanol, I add water to ethene in presence of phosphoric acid catalyst, 300 degrees Celsius. That gives me ethanol. Which property is shown by aqueous ethanoic acid? So he's talking about an acid. It reacts with magnesium to form water. No, any acid reacts with a metal to form hydrogen. It turns red litmus to blue. No, any acid turns blue to red. It reacts with copper to form hydrogen gas. First of all, remember, copper does not react with any acid because copper is below hydrogen in the electrochemical series, so it will not react with acids. It reacts with carbonates to form carbon dioxide gas. Yes, that is correct. Any acid will react with carbonate to form carbon dioxide gas. Last question, which statement about polymers is correct? He's saying all synthetic polymers rapidly break down. No, we said synthetic polymers are non-biodegradable, so they do not break down in landfill. So that A is wrong. Nylon is a natural polymer. I'm going to remind you again, which one did we say is natural? Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are natural polymers. Nylon is synthetic. Proteins are non-biodegradable natural polymers. They are natural polymers, but they are biodegradable. So if he says proteins are non-biodegradable, that's wrong. Synthetic polymers are harmful to marine life. Yes, we said synthetic polymers like nylon and terylene would be harmful to marine life because they accumulate in the oceans and they could cause the death of marine animals. So this is the end of the paper. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for listening.